Right, this is going to be my first ever fountain pen type video, and in this I'm going to try out these pens. Well, I'm not really trying out the Waterman Kareem because I've done that already, and I like it a lot, especially if this stupid video camera focuses. Now it's a medium nib and it's very smooth, but today I'm going to look at some rather different Parker 45 type nibs. So there's my Kareem nib with its sort of fox head shape, really. I think wicked, absolutely lovely. It's just a medium nib. And then I'm going to be looking at the Parker 45R nib, which is obviously sort of an oblique italic. The Parker 45 D nib, and I think I've just gone and got that the wrong way round. No, I haven't. That is the D nib indeed, which is possibly a right oblique italic. It's barely oblique at all. It's quite interesting, actually. It's quite an interesting nib. It's almost a flat stub, but not quite. And then the Parker 45Y nib, which, as you might see in a minute when this thing deigns to focus, is a left oblique, narrower, maybe a medium italic. And this is what they look like. Now this is all with the same ink, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so there's the Waterman Kareem. Okay, there's the Parker 45 with the R nib. So I'm going to move these aside, and I'm going to write maybe just a little more with the R nib if I can get the right one. And the R nib, if I look at the video, it's not quite live, is an oblique. It may be an italic. I'm not sure if it is really an italic, but as you can see, it really is rather lovely, actually. Very wet and very nice to write with, and it gives you a very narrow ascending diagonal, and the nib looks a little bit like that. Okay, and it's definitely oblique, maybe a 15-degree oblique. Now the D nib is not the same. It's a lot drier, and it gives really narrow lines here. Let's do it. And maybe here. No, it's giving me a broader line because I'm using it at a different angle. And it gives me a broadest line that way. Now, actually, that looks wetter than it was before. Maybe this is because I've only just taken delivery of them. It depends, of course, exactly on the angle you hold the pen. But that is a very narrow line. Okay, so I've got sort of medium lines there. So that's kind of an oblique. So you get much coarser shading, obviously going descending diagonals than you do with ascending diagonals. I mean, that's actually true with, and that's what the nib looks like. It barely perhaps has a little bit of a slope down this way. It might be 5 degrees or something. It's certainly not a 15-degree descending right foot. Well, it's not really right foot or left foot. It may very slightly be right foot, just descending a little tiny bit. This one's definitely a left foot diagonal, and the shading on the, let's go for the R nib again, that I just tried a minute ago, again is very similar, actually. It can be a little bit more uniform with the R nib, actually. And it's a lot wetter than the D nib. Now these were all inked with ordinary Parker Quink, blue black, permanent. and there's a little bit spilt on my tablecloth. But both of these are absolutely just gorgeous. Certainly the D one, it might be a stub. It's probably too sharp to be a stub. Okay, and then the Y nib. The Y nib is a gold one actually. It's kind of far scratchier than the others, and it's not really flexy. I don't think any of them are flexy. I can't really show that there. Let's see if I can get any kind of an image with a magnifying glass. Probably not. Oh, there we go. Okay, that is the Y nib, and again the thinnest line. Again, you've got the same kind of shading effect with the thinnest line, and it's quite similar in some ways to the R nib at the top. So there's the R, there's my medium nib careen, there's the R nib, which may be a broad oblique italic, and then the D nib, which may be a kind of broadish stub italic, possibly, not really sure. It's as wide as that one. It may be right foot oblique, but only very, very, very slightly. And there's the Y nib, which I think has actually been reworked because there are some slight grinding lines on it, and that's probably a medium bleak italic. Now, if I write the date with them, it looks like that. Okay, and this is all with the same ink, so you can see the difference in the wetness and dryness of those. Certainly the Y nib, you have to write slowly. With the others, if you get the right angle, you can write fairly continuously. And with the careen, of course, you can just glide across the page, basically. Yes, so very, very interesting. I'm no expert on oblique nibs and italic nibs. I know very little about them, but they're fantastic, actually. And I hope to make another couple of videos on them soon. So with that, I bid you goodbye.